Hello, everyone. Welcome to Get Out of Rap. Today, I'm joined by James Hughes from Sabio. He's the global head of solutions, and it's the second in a series going behind the scenes at Sabio, seeing some of the exciting stuff they're up to. And I'm really looking forward to this one. For those of you watching on YouTube, we'll get to the backdrop, James's backdrop in a sec. But James, thanks very much for agreeing to come on.
No, lovely. Really excited to be here, Martin. Thanks for having me.
Well, first of all, let's start with that. For those watching, how many guitars? You've got some great guitars on the wall behind you.
Yeah. So I'm a sort of 80s rock sort of fan, and I've got a neon yellow one for those who are listening. So yeah, sort of wear a blonde perm and put a wig on and pretend I'm from the 80s and rocking out. Yeah.
Do you actually perform?
Not so. My last public performance was 2011, something like that. You know what it's like, family and work life catches up with you. You sort of, you don't get to do the things that probably you once did. But hopefully when the kids leave and go to university, we'll get back to
get back on the road.
Yeah. I love playing live. It's great fun. But yeah.
Well, more power to you. I did a dad's dancing thing in December because of my daughters are in a dance group and acrobatics rather and stuff. And that was the most terrified I've ever been getting on stage. And we had like 13 weeks rehearsal for a 2-minute dance routine. And it didn't matter if we went wrong because people were just there. It was a bit of fun, it's charity and everything. And I was terrified, absolutely terrified. So more power to you for doing it. I guess it's addictive.
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything else. You desensitize yourself to it if you do it enough and for long enough. But I've had long enough now to be out of doing it that if I do go back, I'm going to be nervous for sure. Yeah.
So as well as some 80s rock, you're global head of solutions. What's been your career to date then? How have you got to where you are now?
Oh, right. Okay. So I've been in IT, from the moment I left university. I actually joined IBM very early on in my career as a, fresh-faced lad out of uni. And and I did IT and I was an applications engineer and those sorts of things in IBM. But one of the things that really touched me from very early on in my career is IBM sent basically everybody on a customer care course. And I went on the first course and that, you could choose to just finish there. And it just touched me. And then I went through all of the IBM customer care courses and I just got, just became a fan of helping customers. And then I started getting involved in contact center stuff with IBM and then been in the contact center industry ever since. And I still love it today.
And you went from IBM to where did you go next?
So I 2P'd into Fujitsu, which didn't last long, decided to leave. And
often
then
happens with 2P though, doesn't it?
Yeah. I loved IBM, forced into moving into Fujitsu. And then I just Fujitsu wasn't the place for me. It was fine for others. So I decided, if I'm going to go somewhere, let's pick a contact center expert who specializes in this space. And the two, certainly in the UK, the two contact center experts at that time, sort of 2005-06, that period, were a company called Call Center Technology, who just happened to be around the corner from me. I live in Bristol, and this wonderful company called Sabio. And those two were the pinnacle of contact center in the UK. And if you think of all of the big brands, either one of those guys would be deploying the latest and greatest contact center platform. Given that CCT was around the corner, I knew them more than I knew Sabio. I applied for a role, got accepted. And then the managing director there, a chap called Simon Ferber, really became my mentor. His background was chartered accountant and those sorts of things, but he took me under his wing, and I'm forever grateful to him because he really helped me find who I am and what I could do in my career. So spent a long time at CCT, loved it, great team, loved the exec team. That was brilliant. We got acquired by Capita. So, you know, the big old Capita. And I just felt like, you know, rather than being, you know, a number of, however, 1,000 number of employees, wanted to get back to what CCT was all about in the early days. So I knew Sabio because I'd competed with them regularly at that time. And luckily, Andy Roberts, our vice chairman, he wasn't vice chairman back then, invited me to join Sabio, and I've been here ever since. So I'm 11 years in at Sabio.
That's great. And what does head of global solutions mean and do? What do you do?
Yeah, I get asked that a lot, actually. So my team are focused in different areas. So cloud, you know, contact channel automation, AI, those sorts of things. So I've got experts in each of those realms, and their role really is to build understanding our clients' pain points and challenges in the market, build propositions that we take to prospects and clients to help them overcome those kinds of challenges. And we use, you know, we you know, focus very heavily on Sabio's own IP. So we, you know, build and develop our own capabilities and technologies, or we use best of breed pedigree partners like Genesys or Google or Twilio or Avaya, and we work very, very closely with product teams in those organizations to help us build these propositions that we take to market. So we spend a lot of time listening. I think that's probably, if there was one thing I did more of than anything else, is listen to customers, listen to our account managers who look after those customers as well, you know, and really sort of listen to, you know, market research and that sort of stuff too.
It's fascinating. And just to go back on something, I love it seems to be a common thread of people that have done well in this industry and progressed to kind of senior positions, is the importance of a mentor, right? So that kind of someone that just kind of can give you guidance, and it's fascinating, isn't it? And how, you know, how do you think that helped you?
Oh, it just massively. I've actually had 3 mentors in my career, whether they actually saw themselves as mentors or not.
Doesn't need to be official, does it?
No, absolutely. So Simon Ferber at CCT, Call Center Technology. Then when I joined Sabio, Andy Roberts, who is now our vice chairman, was my line manager, and he certainly mentored me, even if he didn't realize it. So that was amazing. And then there's also a guy at Sabio who the market knows very well. Actually, he's been an amazing career at Sabio. Mike Andrews. He was one of the sort of experts in the field of WFM and workforce optimization and that sort of stuff. And he also has mentored me as well. Probably more understanding that he was mentoring me. So that's been good. But the thing that really, really helps when you're in that kind of environment, and we do operate in a really complex world, right? Is that they mentor you, but they look at you as the expert in the thing that you do. So they're not trying to tell you what you should do or how you should do it. They're supporting your ability and experience and creativity to be the best version of yourself. And you know, when you think of that and relate that back to, you know, service advisors or agents working in a contact center, you know, we've got to make them the best, help them be the best version of themselves to get better customer experience, you know, in the long run. So when you think of those sorts of things, you know, it's just, you know, you can touch back on these points in your life and your career, and they make a big difference.
They all kind of connect as well, don't they? That's the thing. Once you have that kind of step back and look at it, and it does lead us nicely into the subject, which I guess, given what you've talked about and the role, might be a surprise to some. And that is, we're going to talk about something you're very passionate about and your team are working on, and that's agent mental health and well-being. And you mentioned it there, which I thought was a lovely phrase, actually, and probably is the way everyone should look. Any leadership position is about making the people that work for you, well, it should be the other way around, the best versions of themselves, right? That's what it's all about. But we're going to talk agent mental health and well-being. How did this come about? Why is this a passion, and why is this the subject of what we're talking about today?
Yeah, so start at the beginning. I mean, I've been in the contact center industry for a long time, and it's rewarded me with a career which I love. And you sort of, for a long time now, before COVID started, I've been aware and I've observed in contact centers agents who aren't the best version of themselves. Let's put it that way. And you sort of then back that up with some data around agent attrition and agent absence, which we'll talk about, but it's getting worse. And then of course COVID happens. COVID, for a lot of people, COVID was a terrible situation. For some people, it's actually helped them live a better life for themselves. So we can touch on that in a minute. But when you add all of those things into a melting pot, 20 years experience in this industry, want to give something back, definitely a problem. I've observed it for many years. It's getting worse. The data supports it. Sabio, you've talked to Jonathan Gale, our CEO at Sabio. I think you've got a podcast coming on that one. The ethics that we have around Sabio, the core values that we have, we are very keen to do something that helps people give back and improve the lives of people that use our technology and use our services in the industry.
And also the people that we as consumers will interact with all the time, who without them in our industry, we wouldn't have an industry. And it's kind of, so I'm like you say, the industry trends are going, I think after that there was a period, wasn't there, where absence kind of disappeared initially at the first year of the pandemic. And now it's all the indicators and all the reports are showing it's going back up, and like you say, the same with attrition. So we have to do something in the industry for sure, for attraction and retention.
Yeah.
And I guess the key thing, retention, is creating the right environment and looking after people so mentally they're prepared to do what is not, whatever we do we have to be honest and say it's a tough job.
Yeah.
An agent is a tough job. I did it myself, and it was a challenge. It was a real challenge. You kind of had to stumble into techniques to help yourself. There weren't many at the time of people telling you how to cope. It was kind of, well, they don't cope, they leave.
Yeah. And when you look at the sort of innate human needs of a person, Abraham Maslow was an American psychologist, and he wrote a paper on that. A lot of people sort of know it as the triangle. It's different layers of the needs of a human being, and everybody's the best version of yourself is to get to the top of that pyramid, and at the bottom is your basic needs, your water, air, food, and those sorts of things. But as you climb the tiers, the need for feeling sort of self-assured and safe, you've got a roof over your head, and and you have people that are close to you both at home and in the workplace. You think about COVID and isolation, you can immediately see there that there's potential for a challenge for anyone in employment who doesn't have that sort of intimate connection because they're working from home. So you think about these things and you think, well, agent attrition is already awful in this industry. I mean, it's probably, we talk about these trends in digital and automation, all these amazing things, but actually probably the biggest trend in this industry is agent attrition. And actually, and we'll come on to it, but I think agent attrition is just scratching the surface. I think when you lift the covers up and look even beyond agent attrition into sort of absence and sickness, and even looking at presenteeism. So, somebody's sitting in a chair taking interactions from customers. Are they really the best version of themselves? And I'm sure we'll talk about that in a minute. But I'm fearful that it's getting worse. The data says it's getting worse, and if we don't do something, then what's going to happen next?
I think that thing, the point about presenteeism is excellent, because especially now with the vast majority of the workforce at home, if you're a team leader or a contact center manager, you can visibly see people just kind of zoning out, and they're hurting actually, and they're just kind of going through the motions, wanting to get to the break or wanting to get to the end of their shift, and that kind of soulless interaction is a self-defense mechanism. You could physically see it if you're in the contact center. You might be able to hear it in someone's voice, but when they're at home, you can't see that. And I think it's a really, really, really good point, because it's kind of you don't get to see it in some of the stats, do you?
No, it's hard to measure. I think, it's like all these things. You want to base your ideas and strategy and thinking and on data that's indisputable. But some things like presenteeism and the reasons for absence and sickness, I'm pretty sure we understand the symptoms. So bad back, headache, flu, cold, bad tummy, those are the sort of symptoms that we see of absence in the contact center. But what's the root cause? Is the root cause that they're burned out? Is the root cause that their mental health is hurting them? That's the thing. Those are the things that we have to get to. And even if they are sitting in their seat taking customer interactions, are they the best version of themselves? Have we done everything that we could possibly do to make sure that they aren't burned out, that they are supported and cared for emotionally, and those sorts of things? And that's the goal that I have, and that's the work that we've been doing in Sabio.
And what does that look like? Can you take us through some of that?
Yeah. So when you boil it down, the contact center, an agent, is probably one of the most monitored roles in any industry, right?
Yeah. On the planet.
Yeah, on the planet. Yeah. And we monitor them to the minute detail. Average handling time, number of calls taken, wrap up time, all this sort of stuff. And the contact center platform, whether it be a Genesis or a Twilio or a Amazon or an Avaya, doesn't matter what the contact center platform, or the workforce management solution. So, monitoring break times and holidays and shift patterns and all those sorts of things. That's an amazing source of data that most organizations use to measure performance of an agent. And our ideation 18 months ago was say, well, if we've got this data, surely that's really good indicators of mental health, wellness, and burnout. Could we use this data alongside a behavioral science model? When I talked about Abraham Maslow's theory, the innate needs of a human being, can we look at those two things together and map this data on it and say, right, can we start to see trends from this data that would indicate burnout and attrition? So, for example, just take a really simple example is, if an agent has taken 8 calls, they're all lasting 25, 30 minutes, they haven't had a break, we have some insight to the type of calls they're dealing with based on their skills group. So they might be in a skills group that's dealing with emotional, complex customer queries. Then that data surely is telling us that mental health and burnout could be a problem. And if you can do something really intelligent with that data and say, well, actually, let's forecast, let's schedule in a bonus break. And if we give them a bonus break at 10 minutes, why don't we give them some additional content around managing their emotions, managing stress, maybe some meditation exercises or breathing exercises. So we start to think about this kind of thing. I'm probably thinking longer term roadmap here, but I think we can make a huge difference. So that's sort of been the thought process. So that's where we've sort of ended up. And then you look at the data, and we sort of touched on this earlier. Back in 2006, 2007, we had average attrition of about 34%, something like that in the UK. in the UK for recent years, it's would have been 15 to 18, that sort of mark. And I think it's bumped up in the last 18 months to 20, 21, 22%, something like that. I think we're predicting, I certainly am, from the organizations I'm speaking to, I'm predicting that's going to start hitting 30 within the next 18 months. So we can see that there's agent attrition, and trying to understand some of the reasons for that. And we've done some work and research, and we've worked with some other organizations who've helped us do some research. And you start to realize that there are some very specific things happening in this industry right now, not just COVID, that are contributing to attrition. And if they're contributing to attrition, they definitely will be contributing to absence and presenteeism issues. So that's where we sort of get to. So when you start looking at some of the reasons for this, now Sabio are a massive supporter of delivering AI and automation and self-service technologies, and they can do brilliant things for organizations. But one of the phenomenons that come with doing all of that is that you often take the repetitive, simple tasks away from agents. So therefore, the interactions that you're asking your agents to handle are more typically of a 3D nature. They're typically more complex, more urgent, and more emotional. And if you add those three things together, you also get another thing, which is average handling time increases. So if we don't change how we support our agents, and every call is now sophisticated, complex, emotional, urgent, and longer, then if we don't change working patterns, if we don't change the support that we're providing them, then you can easily see that that's going to link to burnout, stress, sickness, and presenteeism issues. So that's
it's fascinating, and there's so much to kind of unpick. I love so much about that, even just the kind of the roadmap that you're talking about, where there's some helpful interventions, some prompts, and for people that say, "Oh, are people going to listen to that?" I think most of us wear kind of wearable tech that says, "Oh, you haven't done your breathe, you haven't stood, you haven't done a breathe, you haven't breathed," like kind of the minute. And we're far more in tune with that kind of thing. But it's such a good point, and I hadn't even considered it really, that the removal of repetitive tasks was always seen as, that's great. Agents will love having some complexity and being able to help people more and act and have more agency and use their brains more. And I hadn't ever really thought, well, yeah, that's fine. But if you've just taken away maybe the repetitive task, gave them that kind of exhale moment where they could just go through, without even thinking. I used to liken the role to being like a sponge, or it was kind of like, especially if you're quite empathetic. I did well on I quite liked it, but I definitely felt exhausted at the end of a shift. And I would say to friends and family, you feel like a sponge. You're just kind of taking on the customers, whether it was anger, they were upset, because it's a common thing, and people say, isn't it, not many people are contacting a contact center to make the agent's life better, or it's very rarely good news that you're dealing with. So this kind of looking at what the automation and technology is doing from a positive sense, and then going, okay, how do we then help people, and giving them extra breaks and things like that. I think that's brilliant, especially if it's, like you say, wrapped around let's meditate, let's do something. It's got some great, I can see that having some great applications. There's definitely, I think there's this better understanding in neuroscience, that we know that as humans, how we can focus and how we can deal with tasks for a set period, and that should be baked into our kind of resourcing. It's fascinating times.
Yeah, it definitely is. The other thing you sort of think about as well, if you've ever observed, we spend time observing contact center agents handling a call and trying to understand where the challenges are. If you've ever observed an agent who has not been trained well enough to be in a certain skills group, and they're trying to deal with a very complex emotional customer, but they haven't really had the training to do so. If you observe that, it's quite a sad it's a sad scenario to observe, because the agent wants to do a great job. Nobody does a job and aims to do a bad job. Every agent wants to do a good job, but if they haven't got the skill set, they become demoralized. And if you think of that as one call, they get demoralized. You imagine every day you come into work, you handle 8 hours of interactions, and if you just don't have the skills to help the customer the way you would want to, then that is demoralizing. And that comes back to the psychological behavior and the innate human needs of a human being. If you don't feel that you're doing a good job, if you don't feel that you're adding value, then that has a massive impact on mental health. And the problem that we have right now is, with this absence and attrition that is increasing dramatically, is organizations are scrambling to recruit new agents. And understandably, there is there's a desire to get those new agents bums on seats and answering interactions. So I think there's a tendency right now to rush onboarding of new agents into the role. And then what you get is this vicious circle. They're in the role, they don't have the skill set to solve these sophisticated, complex emotional queries, feeling demoralized and just saying, I've had enough. I'm gonna go and do something else. And if you go back to the sort of 2006-7 period when we had massive attrition in the contact center industry, that was quite an average thing across all organizations and all verticals. I think what we've got now, we're seeing a gap. We're seeing some organizations who have massive amounts of attrition. So 30, 40, 50% attrition every year. And then you've got another group of organizations and brands who have very, very low attrition. So the gap is increasing between brands who do it really well and brands who do it really badly. Whereas back in 2006-7, it was pretty much average across all organizations. And we can learn, this industry, yes, I work for Sabio, but I care about this industry. So collectively, every manager, every person who's a team leader, let's look at the organizations who are doing really well and try and understand what they do differently to organizations who are losing 40, 50% of agents. One of the things we can definitely see is agents feeling demoralized, feeling that they don't have the skills to do a good job. That is a major mental health issue. And that is why, one of the reasons why we're going to lose a lot of people. But if you combine that back to the automation stuff, is taking those simple tasks and delivering. Every call is complex, every call is emotional. You can see how the demoralization in the role could play an important factor. So we've got to stop it. We've got to get to that.
I think it's about investment as well, isn't it? That there's, I always used to say, if someone's gone on a skill routing, like you say, where they've just said, look, just go on there and do the best you can. We'll get to train you later on. Every one of those interactions leaves a mark on, like you say, you don't want to feel like you can't resolve a call to an outcome that's satisfactory to the customer. It does leave a mark. You're aware that you're not resolving things. You're aware you're not doing your job. What do you think some of the things are then? What are some of the things you guys are looking at in terms of where do you start with this current situation? Because you're right, it is kind of back to the days of kind of plug and play. Don't worry, we can just. I can remember being in a call center, and some of my team leaders, we had new intakes coming all the time, and they would do a tour, and some of my team leaders would go, "Oh, I don't believe it. I used to work with him, used to work with her," and what they were doing is agents were kind of burning out or leaving one center and then just coming to the other one. We were in a city where there were lots of call centers and people were just kind of moving around, and it was kind of accepted. It wasn't, it was kind of like, well, let's just work with a group that survive. The ones that don't, doesn't matter, because we'll have another 30 people starting in 2 weeks' time. That kind of mentality isn't the right one.
No, it isn't. And there's also this notion, this idea that technology solves problems. Sabio don't buy into that. It can help, but you've got to start with people. You've got to, you make the technology work for the people, and there's so many different ways you can do that. Perfect example is, I've spoken to a few clients in the last couple of years who, when you ask them about agent experience, I'm thinking more, what does an agent have to go through on their desktop? How many applications do they have to switch? Those sorts of things, not just skills and demoralizing and mental health and burnout, but, even sort of the wider stuff. And you get this sort of feedback from exec sometimes that says, well, we think our agents need this, and our assumption is this, and lots of sort of gut feel and instinct, and I've been in this industry 20 years and my experience tells me that our agents need this. And you just ask the simple question, have you asked them? And you get this blank look on your face. And so the first thing is, the people who know better than anybody else are the agents, the people who sit there in those chairs every day trying to do the best job they possibly can. They're the ones who know. So the first thing we always do would just say, ask them, have a chat, speak to them, give them a safe place to feel that they can speak and say how they really feel for the good of the business. That's just really sort of the basic mechanics. So that's one thing. And you can talk about voice of the employee surveys. I think they have a place, but mental health and burnout aren't a once every 3 months thing or a once every 6 months thing. Mental health and burnout is in the moment thing. That moment where you feel that every pressure is just on top of you and you can't cope. That's when mental health and burnout is a problem, not when the survey comes 3 months later and you've forgotten what you were doing at that particular point in time and you just, you know what I mean? So, so that's a problem. So I've already talked about the contact center data. We've got a huge, rich data source of stuff that's already there. So let's collect that and use it to analyze how agents are feeling, how agents might feel in terms of stress and burnout. So that's one area. The other thing that we're working on that we have now is an application. It sits in the contact center agent desktop. So if they've got Genesis, it sits within the Genesis agent desktop or a Twilio agent desktop. And it's a virtual mental health coach. And it's completely anonymous. So you can't, you wouldn't be able to see it was James Hughes or what have you. And it's a place where you can check in with your emotions and your feelings and your, level of stress and all those sorts of things. And you can score yourself, subjective self kind of scoring. And we give the agents access to this application. We also, if they want, and we would definitely recommend, is that they can have it on their app, so Android or iOS device.
Brilliant.
And that, so then because mental health is workplace and social life. So it's good to be able to check in with themselves in work and at home and just, score how they're feeling. Now, we have access to the data completely anonymized, so we can't see that it was James Hughes, but we get an understanding based on teams of 10 or more. So if you've got a team in a certain part of the business unit handling calls, you can compare and contrast a team of 10 individuals or more with another team of 10 individuals or more and understand why are they, low burnout, really, mentally robust and able to feel like they're really coping, but this team over here isn't. And we can see the kind of feedback, the scoring from that, but we can also then apply it to the underlying contact center data about how much, how many interactions and complexity and skills group are we actually asking them to manage. And then you can really start to get an understanding of events, boosts and pressures that are really, burning the agents out. So that's what we focus on.
I absolutely love that. So if I'm an agent, it sits on my desktop and I can interact with it at any point.
Any point you like, yeah.
And it will just, is it one where I can it does interact with me. So I can say, here's my current mood is this, and it will prompt me to think about it and get mindful around it, and maybe point me to different resources. And
exactly that. It will give you tips on coping with certain situations, guidance on how to manage things. It might recommend, create an action plan to speak to your team leader, talk about these things. These things are certainly causing you pressure, in certain areas, and it would sort of give them guidance, just basically give them some coping mechanisms if they are feeling particularly burned out or stressed. So, and that sort of subjective self piece. I mean, a lot of mental health research. I'm not a mental health expert, but we work with some mental health experts. But one of the things that research tells us is that people who take control of their own mental health do have a greater level of success in managing mental health and pressure and burnout issues. So again, giving people the tools to help themselves is a really positive step on this journey. Yeah.
And the fact that that app can follow them out of the building or at the end of their shift is massive. I as we spoke about before recording, mental health, men's mental health, everyone is a massive part of my life in terms of being quite evangelical about we need to talk about it more. People need to see people in senior positions talk about it more. So it's great to hear you do this in the work that you're doing. And I've no problem admitting, at a time in my life many years ago, I also struggled with some mental health, and finally through friends and family went to see someone, had some counselling, which was great. And I kind of wish that I'd had it when I was doing well. It's kind of like, why wouldn't you want to fine tune your brain and get it working as best it can? But one of the things that really, really helped was a series of apps that you could check in with every day whenever you felt like it. And you're right, that kind of questioning, understanding of yourself. So one of the simple questions would be, in comparison to yesterday, how are you feeling? And you unless you ask yourself that, you don't do that. So you go, actually, I'm feeling a bit better than yesterday. Okay. Instantly you feel better by recognizing that, and that kind of, it just became a very nice routine that then led to where I'm at now, which is kind of always making sure that there's mindful moments in my day and recognizing some of the triggers and things like that. And if you could bake that into someone's working day at the coalface of customer interaction, I think that's brilliant. And did you say, I just want to get this bit right, that you could get, it's all anonymous, of course, but you get anonymized group data?
Yeah.
So you could see a particular group and go, right, I'm going to investigate now why this group are performing better than this one over here. What's happening? And I love that.
The purpose here as well is this is about helping people,
of course,
agents and their team leaders and their managers be the best versions of themselves. So it's not about it's not a witch hunt to find which managers aren't emotionally supporting their agents. It's not about that. It's about providing the data to help better conversations. So if you're a team leader of 10 people or more, you can understand the general feeling of mental health and well-being. You can't drill into the individuals. Trust is really, really key for this proposition. But if you're an exec or a CEO, you can have a top-down view of all of the different units within the business, and really start to see trends and what have you across different parts of the business, compare and contrast and those sorts of things. But obviously, it's an unbelievable indicator to culture in your business. So and really understanding trends to good culture, good, well-adjusted, well-managed, supported, robust workforce. And we know the outcome, certainly from a contact center. If you've got a motivated, well agent workforce, the likelihood that you've got really happy, amazingly well served customers is a strong chance. So it's what we thrive for, isn't it, really?
Completely. And I think that kind of this for me always comes back to, so if you have you've got agents who have access to this that are able to help them navigate to the right resources, or just feel like they have somewhere where they can, it's even nice just to be listened to, even if it's through a system, and the company you're working for care about your mental well-being and recognize that. It's a massive part of it. But for me, it always comes down to what this tells us is we need to equip team leaders, and we need to help team leaders understand their priorities. Number one is the well-being of their team. And in my experience from being a team leader, then managing team leaders, one of the things, it's never a team leader who might appear that they don't care, that maybe officious, that they're probably very efficient and they can drive performance. I never once thought, you know what, that particular team leader dislikes everyone in their team. Actually, when you tap into it, the reason that they maybe weren't able to have empathetic interventions is fear, because they didn't know what to do. They didn't know where their role started and finished. And I think that comes down to, that was an onus on us and the company, and then the industry, to go, right, let's equip our team leaders to help and protect and let agents thrive. If they're going to thrive, then the key to that is their mental well-being, their mental health. Like you say, the technology will enable people to. I saw there was a CCMA did a report about the number of applications. They can draw a correlation between the number of applications someone has to do their job to their kind of their well-being.
It's a big stressor. Yeah,
isn't it? And there was something else you said as well. I thought, I was talking to someone about this yesterday. The point around your work, the agents know 100% of the problems that exist, and it's an iceberg. And as you go up to the top, it's like the senior leaders know 4% on average of the problems, but it isn't in a survey that people are going to find those things out. You were dead right about just go and talk to them, create the routines to be able to have conversations with agents.
Yeah,
couldn't agree more.
The problem is people don't like to talk about mental health, and we don't like to talk about mental health with our friends and family, let alone with our employer. The fear of telling your employer that you're suffering from burnout and stress, that's a scary conversation to have on a one-on-one with your manager. What part of this solution is about taking that fear away and just opening up a layer where the agent can just explain how they're feeling. And because it is 100% anonymized, they don't have to fear what's being said. So that's the thing. And like, I think you touched on it a minute ago, you talked about mindfulness. The thing with mental health is it's an in the moment thing. Self-awareness and being aware of how you are feeling in that moment is really important. And with this application on the agent desktop, they can check in with how they're feeling in that moment. And that's the gold dust information that helps organizations transform. Stu Dorman, who you've had on the podcast before, we work really closely together. We sort of use this phrase, inform to transform. So the purpose of understanding this information, how well agents are from a mental health and well-being perspective, is to then transform what it is we need. Now, does it mean we need to deploy technology to help people reduce the number of applications and screens they're flicking through? If an agent is on average flicking through 9 different applications and screens to solve a customer query, that's going to have its toll. So we can use technology to solve that. If there's a particular pain point around a certain kind of customer interaction. Maybe we can use RPA to solve that, or some kind of AI, speech, natural language, self-service applications. Take that really painful thing away if we can. It's using that technology to do that sort of stuff. Even going as far as using, Sabio doing this at the moment, is using real-time sentiment analysis. So to explain to an agent before they even have, even if they're in the, just starting a call with a customer, to highlight to the agent that that customer is already frustrated. That gives them the tools to then better handle that, the rest of that interaction. So stuff like that is where it really starts getting interesting. So this whole concept of inform to transform, this whole mental health and well-being piece is really just trying to inform ourselves of the problem in a particular organization and across the wider industry. So that's the goal.
Is it an ongoing and I absolutely applaud that. I love the kind of, because it's not just about yourselves, is it? You're actually informing the agents as well, as much as possible, providing tools to help them get through those interactions successfully for them and for the customer.
Yeah.
So it doesn't leave that mark on them that then just cumulatively adds up. What else have you? I mean, in the think tank, is this for you guys an ongoing passion piece where you're just going to keep trying to find different ways of doing this?
Yeah, I think the the opportunity is limitless. If you can think it, we're trying to come up with ideas of how we can help. Certainly Sabio and Jonathan Gale, and my boss is Tom Mullen, who came in with the developer acquisition of Twilio Google partner, who we acquired a couple of years back. So Tom Mullen is my boss. He's chief product officer at Sabio, and our goal is to find ways to solve problems for people. Often that's using tech to solve that problem, but it's first understanding the problem in the first place and not making assumptions based on our experience or the exec in that particular customer's business, their experience in past employments that they've had. It's about getting to the data to make proper strategic decisions that are based on fact and not assumptions. And if you imagine, I'm just thinking, if I was thinking the perfect outcome, it would be to an organization uses this technology to understand mental health and well-being of their agents, and then they use that data to formulate a better strategy to solve the problems to improve mental health. And imagine I'm just thinking of this communication from exec in this business to their agent saying, we've taken this information on, we've understood the stress and the pain and the impact this is having on your own well-being. And because of that, and because of this data that you've helped us gather, we are executing on these initiatives to solve these problems. We're using natural language processing to take away these particular customer interactions that we can see are causing you pain. And we're going to take those away so you no longer have to handle those. And what we're going to do is we're going to reduce the number of applications that you have to switch by integrating your Salesforce platform with your Genesis contact center platform. And we're going to make it seamless so it's just easy for you to do a really good job. And if you're doing a really good job and you feel like you're doing a really good job, then you're going to feel, really passionate about the company you work for. That is my vision.
That's retention right there. Yeah. That is retention right there. I absolutely love that. I think if you, like you say, if you had people, because it always used to, I'd go along to any event or listen to any speech that was talking about the agent of the future. And I think the gap that was missing is what you've touched on there, this kind of, what are we, with our greater understanding of mental health and the challenges that the work has on it, what are we doing to address that? What support are we giving so that we are, from the moment someone steps into the contact center, all we're doing is preparing them and arming them and supporting them and giving them the skills and the technology so that when they are confronted with challenging moments, they've got the solution and it doesn't leave an impact on them, and they feel like they're progressing and valued, because like right back at the start, it shouldn't be about survival. It should be about everyone's thriving. It should, it's not Darwinian. It's like you say, it's about the hierarchy of needs and how you make sure that people are just enjoying it as well, because that's the bit that's missing, isn't it? And I think having access to your own help in the moment is great. And I imagine it's got a long way to go. You're obviously very passionate about it. And I wish you all the best. And I'd love to kind of stay along and see what you're doing and get involved. It sounds great.
Yeah, we'll keep in touch and regular chats about it, I'm sure. But like, I don't want to put a downer on it, but of course, it is worth pointing out that mental health issues left unchecked lead to really serious outcomes. And of course, being a male myself, tends to be men who speak less about mental health issues, which is no coincidence that 3 of 4 suicides are men. So there's a personal piece, and certainly from you, but it sounds like we've both had sort of mental health well-being issues in the past. Being male, definitely something that resonates with me. So
I still think I think you're dead right. I still think it's great that it's a topic that's talked about now a lot. That's great. But I still think there's still, especially for men, the stigma around being able to say, you know what, I'm not just one thing. I'm not a mental health illness or wellness. We're complex people with histories and experiences, and we should be able to talk about them. And it's great to see a lot of groups evolving and being created, whether that's around sport or just men coming together or through work. The more people that talk about it, the better. I think the next step, and it's great to see contact centres having mental health first aiders or mental health champions and those kind of focal points around the centre, sharing good messages and being first responders, if you like. But I think the next step will come where because we're still not there yet, where if someone says, oh, so-and-so's off because they're depressed, or so-and-so's off because they're having a mental health challenge, there's still too high a proportion of people that scoff at that, but they wouldn't if somebody said, oh, they fell over and broke their elbow. Oh, of course they'll be off for a week or a few days, that's fine. Someone that says, look, so-and-so is having a particular challenge around their mental health illness, I still think we have a way to go to
There's a stigma. There is.
Yeah.
There is. But, and this proposition is about avoiding the tick box exercise that a lot of organizations are going through. Yes, we're going to set up a monthly mental health thing. Nobody's going to come onto a mental health call and talk about their mental health issues. Let's be really honest with ourselves. It's a tick box exercise. Let's do it properly. And a lot of that has to be giving people a safe place where they feel that they can talk or share, even if it's anonymously. Let's do that. Let's help people do that.
I think I love that. I think I would love to think that there are companies, customers of yours, who are using the data to kind of feed that back into both their recruitment, their inductions, their ongoing training and support about what are the things that we should be doing, what are the things that we should be looking out for. I'd love to I'm thinking on the fly here, but it would be great to have a session that involved everyone and think, because I just think about resourcing as well. You mentioned that earlier on. Surely, and it all comes down to cost, I know, but surely there's a way where we have to recognize that long periods of dealing with tasks, especially if you say if they're emotive, has an impact. You know, you can protect and build support around individuals as much as you like, but if it's a concerted period of those tasks, that's going to have an impact.
Yeah, definitely.
What I'm saying is, come on, let's you've got some guitars there, let's get everyone together, let's form a band, let's get HR training. You guys, we must be able to do something.
Let's do it. Yeah, and I'm sure your listeners would want to hear those stories. Yeah,
if not the music.
Yeah. We should write a song.
What's your absolute all-time favorite band then from the 80s?
Oh no, this is going to be embarrassing.
No, it's not.
I like Whitesnake, and because Steve Vai was the guitarist. Those who know guitar music, Steve Vai was the guitarist in Whitesnake for a period of time, and he's one of the, if not the greatest guitarist of all time. Well, certainly in my eyes. So I like Whitesnake when he was their guitarist. So yeah,
I love that. You should own that. You've got the best backdrop. It's been brilliant talking to you. I have a funny feeling we're going to be talking again. But James, thanks very much for coming on, and keep up the good work, mate.
Thanks for having me, Martin.